Welcome to another Facebook Live with Heat, What's in Your Prevention Toolbox series. I'm coming to you live today from the highway in Toronto after my REACH meeting, so bear with me while we go through today's discussion. Today we're going to be talking about stigma related to HIV, or HIV-related stigma. It depends on which way you want to look at it and how it goes. What we know is that stigma and HIV-related stigma really does remain one of the deeply entrenched issues related to people getting access to testing, going in for testing, getting treated fairly by services and resources and other things like that. So HIV stigma has been around since the beginning of HIV and continues to be one of the root issues that we need to address on a regular basis. So I'm going to read a quote to you now because it is a quote and I don't want to get it wrong. And it's from the former General Secretary Ban Ki-moon speaking to the issue of stigma. So what he said was, stigma remains the single most important barrier to public action. It is the main reason why too many people are afraid to see a doctor to determine whether to have the disease or to even seek treatment if they do so. It helps make AIDS the silent killer because people fear the social disgrace of speaking about it or taking easily available precautions. Stigma is a chief reason why the AIDS epidemic continues to devastate societies around the world. And that's a reality for today. And to give you some other examples of what that might look like in today and throughout its history of HIV, I have some other quotes from people. So for those who are afraid of, the fear of catching HIV, how is stigma related to that? A quote from a client was, I had a couple say, we'll put a cup and a saucer and a plate away for you in the cupboard, and then you don't have to worry about anything. And the response is, I didn't get HIV from drinking coffee. So really, it's a stigmatizing and an invalid fear. Another one is behaviors are judged as taboo or evil. So the quote from a client was, my family would go to family functions and tell people I had leukemia, so they didn't have to explain HIV or having AIDS. Using another disease that is more acceptable to address the fact that HIV is still so stigmatized. It's about marginalized group. A lot of people like to stigmatize marginalized groups. So a client told us, I've been yelled at, AIDS junkie whore, get off my property. So another form of stigma that is really deeply rooted in fear and a lack of information and knowledge about who's really at risk for HIV. So those are just some examples, but in the work I do and a lot of the online work I do on outreach, and when I look at people's profiles and stuff, I see comments like no femmes, no fats, no queens, no rice queens. These are all really stigmatizing languages and terms, and I realize we're trying to use short little quotes. We only have so many characters we can get into our tagline, but really these are really stigmatizing and racist comments at times and can be really cause a great deal of harm to the people who are reading them or who you may be speaking about. Another one of my most unfavorite things I see posted online, and this is me personally as a person living with HIV as well as anyone doing this work, is the I'm clean, you be too statement. Please, really think about removing this. It is probably the most stigmatizing statement anyone could make to anyone or about anyone living with HIV. People living with HIV are clean. They shower, they bathe, they do all those things. It's not about being clean. It's about knowing your status and being on treatment and preventing transmission of HIV. That's what we're talking about. So we also have other forms of stigma. People who chose to take PrEP, for example, in the early days of its availability, were being called Truvada whores, and they were all going to go party and blah, 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 blah. Those old, deep-rooted stigmas and fears surfaced very quickly. Treatment as prevention, that works. People don't believe that science, and they like to stigmatize people who are maybe HIV positive on effective treatment, who are undetectable and therefore untransmittable. Science proves it's true. We're allowing our stigmas to perhaps prevent that message from being made clear. So some of the things that we want you to take away from today is that stigma remains a big challenge. Take a moment to maybe look at your own personal stigmas and your values and perhaps some of your biases, and look at how you can maybe remove some of those barriers and statements that may be causing some harm to other individuals. If we can really speak to stigma, we can really open the door to people going and getting tested and feeling safe and talking about a disease that's important in their lives. Now, before I close off, I do have a nice little announcement to share with Albertans anyway. I'm happy to announce after my meetings over the last 2 days that Alberta now has a community-based research regional coordinator, and that we will be pursuing a Stigma Index research project in the province of Alberta. So for those of you living with HIV in Alberta, look forward to the upcoming Stigma Index and having an opportunity to have your say on how you have experienced stigma in your life as a person living with HIV. Thank you for joining me today from the highway of lovely Toronto, Ontario. And remember, send us in your questions, any thoughts on topics we should be talking about. And last but not least, know before you go. Thanks, everyone. Have a great weekend.